What's going on? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central. I'm your host, Haize. You can be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me. This is our second episode on the draft coverage for today. We're going to be getting into the top 5 prospects /6 because I threw in a bonus of who I think the Bulls should draft if available on tonight's draft. We'll also be going over the news of the Lakers buying into that second round. We'll get into all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
First up, the Lakers have now, after been trying to move into the draft, they have acquired Orlando Magic's 35th overall pick for a future second round pick and cash. Now, this was one of the picks that in one of my videos, I did speak about the Bulls possibly going after. Now, this one's going to be a little bit different. They're not going to go after, the Bulls weren't going to be trading cash. I don't think they're going to be giving any other first round picks, but the Lakers were desperately trying to move into this draft to get a draft prospect. What does that mean? Does that change anything potentially? Not for the Chicago Bulls. Now, who could the Lakers possibly be targeting here? This very well could be a Kai Sotto, right? A player that, a lot of people think could go in that second round, but it seemed like Kai Sotto had a promise already, so more than likely it's probably not that unless they moved ahead of that team. It could be somebody like a Christian Koloko as well. Could be somebody that they're looking at, a Caleb Houston as well. Caleb Houston, somebody who was on my list of players I did want to see the Bulls avoid, but Caleb Houston, a solid 3-and-D wing prospect there as well. Ishmael Kagmate also could be one of the picks here. That's a 6'11 center out of France. There's a lot of different routes that even with being the 43rd overall pick that we could see the Lakers try to go as they try to find some type of way to add some future talent to that team. Now, they're probably going to go high upside because they've given away so many young players over the last few years that it's probably going to go very high upside rather than somebody that could go right now and compete right now, but I could be wrong on that as well. But let me know what you guys think down below. What do you think the Lakers are going to try to do with that 43rd overall pick? Now, something that we have going on with the Bulls, we haven't really got too much movement here. We haven't gotten a couple of more rumors have dropped about that 18th pick. Nothing solid. So I think right now as we get closer to the draft, in my opinion, unless we hear something, because it's draft day, they can absolutely make a trade now. The draft, it wouldn't be official till after the draft. They would be drafting for that player. They could technically announce something now, but we could be seeing AK play everything close to the vest as well. Now, one thing that they wouldn't have to wait to announce at all, if they were moving Kobe White for a pick outright, they wouldn't have to do that. So maybe there's some movement on that. Maybe there's not. Some people would like to see the Bulls go ahead and buy a second round pick to just kind of get that forfeited pick out the way right now early. We'll see what they end up doing with this. But while I'm going to record this video, I wanted to talk about the top 5 players that I feel, if they're there for the Chicago Bulls, what they should do. Now, the first one is going to be a player that the Bulls would have to move up for, more than likely. I will say some mock drafts have updated today, and a few of the mock drafts actually now have Mark Williams falling to the Chicago Bulls at 18th. I wouldn't get my hopes up too high with that. There's a lot of conversation. It may be some things on draft day. This mock draft that I'm looking at right now just updated today about 30 minutes ago is when this mock draft was updated. So as of right now, they do have Malachi Branham, somebody who's on this list as well, going 13th, but they do have Mark Williams falling to the Chicago Bulls at number 18. Tari going to Houston at 17. Jalen Duren going to the Charlotte Hornets at 15 as well. And Oche Abaje, people who are on this list, going to the Cleveland Cavaliers, which I don't necessarily see them drafting another guard. Could be wrong with that, but let's get into our list here. First one is Mark Williams, and this is a player, like I said, I think the Bulls would have to move up for, or he would have to fall. It would have to be a couple of teams that go different routes than what's expected for Mark Williams to fall to us. You guys know how I feel about Mark Williams. You also know how I'm going to feel about this next player. Number 2, Liddell. Liddell, you know what? Let me go back. Mark Williams, let me go back. Mark Williams, we already know, just to kind of rehash, the center out of Duke, a defensive beast. He projects to be possibly a generational defensive talent. What he brings blocking, offensive rebounding overall as well could be things that the Bulls can use off the bench right now. The biggest question marks for him are his offensive upside. What type of offensive player would he be able to develop into? That all remains to be seen. But Mark Williams is number 1 on the list. Next up is Liddell. Talked about him on my video earlier today. Liddell is a player that I absolutely think is just ready to go right now. Now, you guys know how I feel about that. Kind of 2A and 2B are Liddell and Tari, Easton, and me. I hold them in kind of the same regard for what they could be able to bring to the Bulls right now. But I talked about them earlier. Next up is Oche Abaje. This is a center. He stayed in college all 4 years, improved every single year, and finally in his senior year just being somebody who you can run the offense through, showing what he can do passing-wise. He's a smart IQ basketball player. He puts in a lot of work, and he has great work ethic, so it could be something like that. Next up, Yovich. Now, Yovich is the one who would be some high upside, not necessarily ready to contribute right now, which some Bulls fans may not be ready to wait on. He could also be ready to contribute in some form of role right now. I've said it before. I've labeled Yovich as the player that I think at the end of the day, 5 years from now, that we can very well look at and say, hey, he was the best player available in this draft. That's what I think about Yovich. That's what the talent that I feel he has. Again, you could agree, you could disagree with that. We'll see what it all shakes down to. But Yovich, his upside is just, it's hard to deny. When you have a player, 6'11", 225 pounds, he still does need to put on some weight on that frame, but is able to do the things that he's able to do. Put the ball on the floor, passing, rebounding, defense. We'll see how the defense comes around for him, shooting the ball, putting the ball on the floor, a little bit of post moves. He just really is one of those players that you can see developing into just having a lot of skill, being a very high skill level player to pair with high basketball IQ of that. But do the Bulls go that high of upside, or are they more so looking for somebody who can contribute right now? Next up, to round out my top 6 technically, because I threw in one bonus there with Tari, Easton, Malachi Branham. And Malachi Branham is a player that I've said before in my draft player profile for him. He's just a player that you can look at that can come off that bench, that can score some, defend for you, has enough upside. He may very well round out into a heck of a starter in the NBA. I think he's going to be one of those guys who can easily get you double-digit points off the bench. He's a better defensive player than a Kobe White and has better upside in that manner. So if they do end up moving on from a Kobe White, you can see Malachi Branham sliding right into that position off the bench, has a little bit more size right there. They're kind of the same when it comes to size, if I'm being all the way honest. I think Malachi has a little bit of a longer wingspan than a Kobe White does, but he's absolutely somebody that I can see the Bulls going after as well there, and getting a heck of a player, by the way, in that, and somebody who can give you that offensive and defensive versatility off the bench that the Bulls need. When you look at bench players coming in, and somebody said it in the comments as well, when you look at that, again, and I just looked it up, a 6'10" wingspan being 6'5", wingspan well above Kobe's, and he has the tools to be a very good two-way player coming off the bench for you, and that's what we need. And shout out to can't remember which user in the comments said is that the Bulls they have a lot of players that do kind of one thing specialized. You look at bringing in a Malachi Branham, and he comes in and is able to be maybe your best player off the bench in 2 to 3 years just because of his ability to do everything, and pairing that with Io. You don't want to forget Io, but when you look at Io, able to bring Io DeSumo and Malachi Branham off your bench could solidify just everything. You have so much versatility offensively and defensively and passing wise. Those are two players that both have high basketball IQs, and that can raise up whatever else you have on the bench. They can get the most out of those other players on the bench. So Malachi Branham rounding out my top 5/top 6 on players that I would love to see the Bulls draft in today's draft. Now, I've already asked you guys, who do you guys see the Bulls drafting today? You can go ahead and say in this video, who are some of the people that you hope may fall to the Chicago Bulls? That's the question on this video. Who do you hope, if it's somebody who's kind of outside the Bulls range, who would you like to see fall to the Bulls, or the Bulls possibly trade up to go after aggressively? Again, don't mention the EJ Liddells because they're going to be around the Bulls range, but who is somebody you would like to see the Bulls take an aggressive look at and chance at to bring to this team and help improve this team? Let me know what you guys think about all that down below. We're continuing our draft coverage today. I'm probably going to do about 2 or 3 more videos the way that it works outside of the live stream tonight. So make sure you're tuned in. Make sure you hit that notification bell as well to know when we will go live for the draft. Thank you for listening or watching. Make sure you follow the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text and or voicemail, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. Thank you for tuning in. Like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.